I took out a loan for the very first time and I'm actually feeling good about it. I've got a very sensitive relationship with debt and I have never done anything as big as this. I do have a credit card which is technically debt, but since I pay it off in full every single month, I don't really consider it so. But let's talk about the details. I took out a $100,000 loan, and just saying that feels pretty insane because psychologically, this is very hard for me. It's a very big number, and pretty much through like most of my life, I've always used my own money. I have never borrowed. So why did I do it? Well, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that it won't be for some super expensive holiday or to buy the newest Range Rover Sport, although I'd love to own it one day. None of that. This is debt I'll be using to invest. Of course, this is a finance channel. I don't think you guys would expect anything less than for me to borrow to invest rather than borrowing to, finance a massive holiday or to buy the newest car. I want to get comfortable with using other people's money, the bank's money, to really supercharge my own wealth building journey. Right now is the youngest I'll ever be with no mortgage to pay and no rent to pay because I live with my parents. I'm very fortunate to be in that position, and I know that things won't be like this forever, and I really want to make the most of it by just going hard at it very early on. So if you look at it like that, it makes sense to invest as much as possible, as early as possible. I've got friends that have borrowings in the hundreds of thousands to, in the millions, and it just blows my mind that people can be so comfortable with borrowing that much. Like, I'm sitting here with a loan of 100K thinking that this is the biggest thing ever, while these guys have literally 10x, 20x, 30x the amount of debt, and they don't get scared over it one bit. But I'm just thinking, wow, 100K is the biggest thing ever. So of course it requires a lot of mental stamina to work up to that point, and I think getting comfortable with a small portion, although 100K is not small, it is small enough that I can get comfortable with it and test it out and go from there and slowly just work my way up. Because using debt is a huge accelerant to your wealth building journey. You can really supercharge it, but you have to be very disciplined and you have to remain calm. And you certainly should not be doing it if you're a beginner. Now let's get into the specifics, but before we do, obviously this video is not financial advice. If you're a beginner and you haven't even started to invest, literally don't do any of this. This video is for educational purposes only. I'm just trying to talk about different ways you can build wealth, but obviously you should not copy this or anything like that if you don't know what you're doing. So the product that I've got is the NAB Equity Builder. Now, basically you can use this to diversify and grow your investments with loans starting from 20K. It's essentially a P&I loan, principal and interest investment loan, to buy managed investments. And you can also buy ETFs with this loan as well. You can get loan terms up to 10 years. You can do early repayments, and it's a variable rate with no ongoing fees. And you can kind of just look at this and what it does. And here it outlines that you can of course buy into LICs and have separately managed accounts as well. You got 950 investments. You have an investment portfolio that can grow in value over time as well. And any dividends that you get, you will be getting those dividends as part of the package as well, because obviously you own the investment. And of course, let's not forget the risks. Obviously you're using debt to build wealth. So when you're using debt, everything is basically magnified. So while the gains can be super magnified, it goes the same the other way as well. So you can lose a lot of money very quickly with this product, so you do have to be very careful. And if you do miss a monthly repayment, they have the power to sell your shares as well to repay the debt. So of course this might have capital gains tax implications too. So there's a lot to go into. I'm not going to go into every single thing on this list, but it's important to consider because you're literally borrowing money to build wealth. And this is not for people who just want to invest in the short term. This is a long-term product only. Hence, you can only buy managed funds, ETFs, which are generally for people who want to invest for the long term. This is not some short-term, like get-rich-quick scheme at all. So as we saw before, there are 950 approved investments, and from them you can find some of the most popular ETFs that Australians like to buy. So as you guys can see, you've got the A200 ETF with 80% security ratio, which means that you can borrow up to 80% of the value. So if you want to invest $10,000 of funds into this ETF, the bank can lend you 80% of that. So the bank can lend you 8,000, and you have to come up with the rest of the 2,000 to make the transaction happen. If you do have your own A200 units, you can actually transfer them here as well, and you can count them as security, so you don't have to put up any extra cash. But obviously I'm not going to go into specifics with that. But going into the list, you've also got ETFs like ETHI, which is quite popular at 80%. You've got FAIR as well, of course, the Australian counterpart at 70. Then you've also got IVV and IHVV, which are very popular S&P 500 ETFs with a ratio of 70%. You can go through this list and there are a lot of investments on here, so make sure you do your own research. I'm not suggesting which one to buy. In fact, don't even use this product if you don't know what you're doing. Now, this is a very good time to point out that this video is absolutely not sponsored by anyone. NAB is not telling me to make this video. In fact, nobody is telling me to make this video. Nobody is giving me payment to make this video. I just want to make that very clear. This is just me, going about the world and discovering the world of debt, and I want to do it in a very informational and educational way and to really show you guys the process. And I think this is very important because it doesn't get talked about as much, understandably, because it's quite complex. Beginners should not be doing this at all, but I think it's important to make videos like this for informational purposes. Now, it's also important to note that this is not a margin loan. With a margin loan, if the value of the shares falls below a certain loan to value ratio, the bank wants you to put up more capital, or they will literally liquidate your shares. With this, the value of the shares can fall and they will not liquidate it, but you do have to meet your monthly commitments. You do have to make those repayments, otherwise the bank can come in and obviously sell them. But apart from that, there will be no margin calls as part of this product, which makes it very, very attractive because it is quite similar to investing in property in a sense that you have a standard loan term, you have set repayments, and you have LVRs as well. So it's similar, but not the same. So looking at what it's going to cost you to get this product, we can see that the standard rate is 8%, which is quite a lot. But then the special rate is 6% with that 2% discount that you guys will be getting. So it's, the rate used to be about 3.75 in the low rate period that we had, but of course now it has jumped up to 6% and has basically moved up in line with the RBA. Let's just be honest here, this interest rate is not ideal. It is quite high, but I would argue that it is still worth it, and I'll try and outline why. If you look at competitors like NAB and CommSec, their margin loans are charging interest rates of around 8%. So this is 2% lower than a standard margin loan. And then of course, the dividends that you'll be getting from the ETFs will be covering roughly maybe 20 to maybe 30% or even half of your total interest cost for the year. So this investment is, somewhat paying for itself, not all. And then of course, at current stock market levels, I would argue that the upside is still good. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that you have to time the market, but if you look at similar instances in the past, historically speaking, like in the COVID crash, the housing crash, and the dot-com bubble burst, the years following the crash, the returns were quite outsized, meaning that the standard, 7 to 10% a year that people often reference, the returns that happened after the sort of the downturn were outsized. They were above the average. And if you look at the stock market right now, we are at those bottom levels. So the upside from here does look fairly decent. And the last and most important point that I want to make here is the fact that using debt early on really speeds up the compounding process. Now look, if you don't know what compound interest is, check out this video right here because this will literally explain everything that you need to know. But let me show you guys an example. So let's say that right now you've got 50K invested in the stock market and you're planning to invest $500 a month, and the compounding is going to happen over 40 years. Let's say you'll be investing for that long and the interest rate is about 8%. So on an 8% average return, you'll be ending up with 2.6 million at retirement. Not bad. Now, let's say that you borrow 50K and you're paying the interest rate that we saw previously, which is 6%. So if we do a rough sort of calculation, you'll be paying around $3,000 worth of interest in the first year. Times that by 40 and you'll be paying $120,000 of interest. Now, of course, because you'll be borrowing an extra 50K, we'll have to add in the $100,000 right here. So if we use the updated example, you can see that at year 40, you'll be ending up at 3.7 million and you've paid 120K of interest. So you're basically spending 120K of your money to get an extra 1.1 mil, and that is all through the power of compounding and getting it in early. Now, it's also important to note that the 120K interest cost example that I use is a very, very conservative example. And the reason being is because this is a principal and interest loan. So as time goes on, you'll be paying principal every single month, which will mean that your interest cost over time should slowly taper off. It should be low. So, it's not a simple calculation as $3,000 times by 40. It's going to be lower than that because obviously you'll be paying down the principal over time. And then also the dividends that you'll be getting throughout that time will be covering sort of 20, 30, 40% of your interest cost anyways. So the actual cost that you're paying out of pocket over time starts to lessen. So it's something to think about. Once again, if you're a beginner, literally the worst thing you can do is to get into debt, to start doing things like this, because it's not going to work out in your favor. You have literally no experience with the markets. You don't know how you're going to react when things don't go your way. There are a lot of new investors that joined the markets in 2020 when everything was sort of going up, and then now they're really sort of seeing their portfolios go down by 20, 30%, and they're all sort of panicking. If this is your first time in the markets, this is literally like the worst thing you can do. You have no idea how you're going to react when things don't go your way. You have no idea how market psychology works. You have no idea about your personal view and how you react to your portfolio literally going in the red for years. And it's harsh, but it's true. So guys, don't do this. Literally don't do this if you are just getting started. This is only for informational and educational purposes. In my situation, I'm just experimenting with debt to get comfortable with it. I still have a full-time job. I still have 6 months worth of funds saved up as an emergency fund, and I'm treading about it very lightly and being very conservative to begin with. At the moment, I still haven't drawn on the 100K limit, but it is something that I will be doing. And this level of debt is not too high that it's going to stop me from investing elsewhere, like buying a property in the future. I've told you guys that I will be investing in property at some point, and this debt level is like modest enough to allow me to do both. I work in lending, so I've ran different calculators factoring in the rate rises in different scenarios, so it should be okay. So all of this to say that you have to make sure you're in a stable financial situation. You have to make sure you've got a stable job, stable income, and everything has to be good. And make sure that you understand this before even thinking about doing anything. Like, use your best judgment. This is not a get rich quick scheme. I always advocate on this channel to invest for the long term. Invest in yourself and invest in assets that will grow for the long term. Do not think about the get rich quick scheme and all the short-term crap. And I'll keep you guys updated on how I feel with debt, because right now it is still like very early stages. I'm definitely not comfortable enough right now to borrow right up to the maximum, even if I could. Like, if you told me my borrowing power is, I don't know, like 800 grand, I'm certainly not comfortable to, borrow right up to the absolute max just because I can. It's just not a place that I want to be at right now. So it's just baby steps for now. And if you're watching this video and you're a complete beginner and you've stumbled onto this video, you can check out my beginner playlist right here, which goes through all the things that you need to know with investing as a beginner. So go check it out right here. And guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. In terms of different, borrowing powers and